India, it is the Election Commission of India (ECI), which is a self-governing constitutional body that oversees the election process as per the Article 324 of Indian Constitution. It has the supervisory and directional control of the complete process of election to Parliament and legislatures of every state, and also to the office of the President and Vice President of India. ECI was set up on the 25th January 1950 with the aim of defining and controlling the multi-tiered election process in our country. This quasi-judiciary body has powers to act in an appropriate manner when the existing laws are not sufficient to deal with a given situation in the conduct of an election. Initially, when ECI was established, it had only one Chief Election Commissioner heading its office. However, in 1989, two election commissioners were deputed, and it was 1990 January where both these election commissioners were removed. Later, in 1991, the Parliament passed a law making provision for the appointment of two election commissioners, and since this amendment, we have a multi-member ECI. The appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and two election commissioners, who are usually retired IAS officers, is done by the President of India. The CEC and election commissioners can hold their office for a period of up to 6 years or up to the age of 65 or 62 years, whichever is earlier. The removal of Chief Election Commissioner from its office can be done upon an order of the President only through impeachment by the Parliament supported by 2/3 majority resolution, whereas the election commissioners can be only removed from the office by the Chief Election Commissioner. The Secretariat of ECI is based in New Delhi and includes two election commissioners, deputy election commissioners, Director General, and various other secretaries. Coming to the advisory and judicial powers held by ECI. Such powers can be broadly divided into three parts: the powers prior to election, powers during election, and powers post-election. The ECI has advisory jurisdiction in terms of post-election ineligibility of sitting members of the Parliament and state legislature, to the extent that the Supreme Court or High Court seek opinion of the ECI in cases of disqualification of person found guilty of malpractice at elections. In such cases, the judgment passed by the ECI is final and binding on the President of India or the Governor as per the jurisdiction. ECI is also empowered to even ban any candidate for not having lodged an account of election expenses by the deadline and as per the law. It can also remove or reduce this period of disqualification. As far as administrative powers of ECI are concerned, of the several powers held by ECI, the most important ones are the demarcation of constituencies by allotting territorial areas for electoral constituencies, organizing and amending the electoral rolls and register all the eligible voters, declaring the election schedules and scrutinizing of nomination papers, recognizing political parties and assigning election symbols to them, scrutinizing nomination papers of candidates, conducting the polls, scrutinizing election expenses of the candidates, and appointing Chief Electoral Officer, District Electoral Officer, Returning Officers, and Election Registration Officers. During the period of election, the entire central and state government machinery, including paramilitary forces and the police, is deemed to be on deputation to the Election Commission. ECI does take effective control of personnel, movable and immovable government properties is deemed necessary for completing the election successfully. The Commission is even empowered to ban publications relating to voting trends such as exit polls or the opinion polls which might seek to influence the voters. As regards to the functions of ECI, ECI is regarded as the guardian of our elections who is responsible for a free, fair and reasonable election in our country. It regulates parties and registers them as per eligibility so as to contest in the elections. It proposes the limit of campaign expenditure per candidate to all the parties and monitors it as well. It mandates all political parties to submit annual reports so as to be able to claim the tax benefits on the contributions. It guarantees that all political parties regularly submit audited financial reports. The most important function of ECI is to ensure that political parties and candidates both adhere to the Model Code of Conduct. Model Code of Conduct are a set of guidelines issued by ECI for conduct of political parties and candidates during elections, mainly with respect to the speeches, the polling day, polling booths, portfolios, election manifestos, processions and their general conduct. The main purpose of MCC is to ensure that the ruling parties at the center and in the states do not misuse their position of advantage to gain an unfair edge. MCC comes into force immediately on announcement of the election schedule by the Commission. These are the set of norms which are evolved with consensus of political parties to abide by the principles embodied in the said code in its letter and spirit so as to ensure free and fair elections. It is designed to avoid practices which are deemed corrupt and to set limit on the poll expenses. Finally, coming to the duties of ECI. ECI not only sets general rules for the elections, but it supervises, controls, conducts all the elections to the parliament and state legislatures. It prepares electoral rolls, it determines territorial distribution of constituencies, that is demarcation, it gives credit to political parties and allot election symbols to them to the candidates. It appoints tribunals for decisions of doubts and disputes arising out of elections to the parliament and state legislature.